Well, thank you very much for that. Thanks for organizing Anne and Jen for setting it up. And last night after I visited with y'all, I did talk with my husband at dinner. He was asking me how the reading went, and I was telling him, I can see you all have a good rapport. The feeling came across that you like each other, and I thought that that was nice. Even when I couldn't see your faces, I was feeling in the comments that you all were supporting. And then when I could see your faces, there were a lot of people nodding and making great eye contact. And I just wanted to appreciate how welcoming you've been to me, even with the magic of the internet. Okay, so I'm just gonna start us off, and I want to tell you a story to start us off. I live in Oxford, Mississippi. I moved here from Illinois. I'm originally a Midwesterner. And when I moved to Mississippi, I became obsessed with hummingbirds. In particular, ruby-throated hummingbirds. And the reason why I became so interested in them is hummingbirds migrate. So what does that mean? It means a ruby-throated hummingbird is so lightweight, you could hypothetically mail 8 of them for the price of a first-class stamp. That's how lightweight they are. Come late summer, they filter down from Canada and upper North America to the states bordering the Gulf of Mexico, of which Mississippi is one. And when they get here, they linger, fattening up, juicing blossoms, up to 3,000 blossoms a day. They double their body weight. Now, what's it mean for a ruby-throated hummingbird to double its body weight? It means it goes from something the weight of a penny to something the weight of a nickel. And then, come late summer, one night, the hummingbird lifts up and flies 500 miles without stopping over the Gulf of Mexico to winter in Central America and point south. They reverse that, of course, come spring. So because hummingbirds linger in Mississippi, fattening up, I get to see them longer than most people. And I have become, a hummingbird lover, a true fan. And I always have my feeder stocked. I'm on the Hummingbird Hobnob listserv. I'm probably the youngest person by about 40 years. My best friend is Myrtle on the listserv. We talk about when they come back and we exchange sightings, the whole bit. Well, do you remember last night in the reading when I was telling you I was trying to write a novel and it kept not working, and I was writing these like little things in my notebook? One morning I put my notebook down and I went outside and I was, replenishing the feeders and looking at my hummingbirds, and I came inside and I flipped through my notebook and I thought, I don't know what these little things are, but there's something here. There's something compelling about these like little tiny things that aren't fragments. They're not a part of something. It's its own thing, just a really small thing. And then I realized I'm writing hummingbirds. And once I came up with that metaphor, I had a way forward, because hummingbirds aren't trying to be big birds. Hummingbirds are perfect because of the size they are. They can do things bigger birds can't do. Because hummingbirds are so lightweight and their wings can go in a figure 8, they're the only birds that can fly forwards, backwards, sideways, hover, and for short distances, fly upside down, which is why hummingbirds are the logo for the American Helicopter Society. So I thought, hummingbirds can do things bigger birds can't do. What could I do in a tiny text that I couldn't do in a longer form? What possibilities are there? What opportunities are there? What could I maximize? What could I play with? What could I explore? And I did a deep dive into the reading of small text. And I thought I would share with you today for my craft talk different kinds of very, very small text that I love, mostly based around creative nonfiction. And mostly, hopefully, ones you don't know as much as, like, say, flash fiction. And I thought I would pair the little pieces we're looking at with 10 tips for tiny text. Yes, I love alliteration. I apologize in advance, but I'm gonna look at a little something with you, and then I'm going to give you a note on something I learned from it. And there's 10 things that I've learned altogether about what tiny text can do. And at the end, we might even see if we have time for a brief exercise. So I hope y'all are, gearing up for that. And so without further ado, I think I'm going to try to share my screen and start our PowerPoint. And I'll mention just one more thing. I'll have to go pretty fast to keep us in our time frame. But if you're not interested in taking notes or you miss something, don't panic. If you'd like, I can send along the PowerPoint, or I could send along handouts as you wish. You'd be welcome to have it to print out. Although I think I would ask if you could keep it within your own MFA program for you and your peers, your cohort, and the people in your program. If you don't mind, don't post it to the internet or do any of those things, because I've created this for you, and golly, it took a long time to figure out the magic of the PowerPoint. All right, so let's get started. I'm sharing my screen. Writing hummingbirds. Tiny text with yours truly, Beth Ann Fennelly. Let's see if I can start the slideshow. All right. So Hemingway wrote a 6-word short story, For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn. Perhaps it's apocryphal because there's actually no evidence that he wrote that down, but it is attributed to him. That short story has given birth to a genre called the 6-word memoir, and it's a really fun thing to try. I'm just going to back up real quick. Imagine if someone asked you to tell the story of your life in 6 words, or one story of your life in 6 words. So I have 3 of them on this page. Here we go. The psychic said I'd be richer. Finally learned that weird is a compliment. Dad's funeral, daughter's birth, flowers everywhere. All right, so I'm gonna move you from that to some tips for writing 6-word memoirs. These are 6 tips, and I've actually adapted this from Larry Smith, who runs 6wordmemoirs.com. So you could write a 6-word memoir and submit it by the end of the day and see it go live, which is kind of fun. His first tip is be specific. So here's one I like. After Harvard, had baby with crackhead. I love how that tells someone's life story in 6 words. Now, I've also molested that one to make it less good. After college, had baby with loser. You see, it's just not quite as funny because it's not as specific. So let's try to be specific in our 6-word memoirs. Number 2, be honest. One I like is being a monk stunk, better gay. Pretty great. Number 3, write like you talk. This one is, my name's not Mamacita, okay? This one actually came from an anthology that Larry Smith did called Fresh Off the Boat, where all the 6-word memoirs were written by immigrants to America. And there's something, really moving to me about the idea that people who are perhaps just learning English for the first time could still use 6 words to tell their story. And there's something really lovely. So this one was written by a 13-year-old recent arrival from Mexico. Here's another one. Let's see. Number 4 tip is experiment with structure. You have 6 words. That could be 1 6-word sentence. It could be 2 3 words. It could be 3 2 words. Here's one, half Jewish, half Italian, totally stuffed. And I love the one that comes next. It's 6 1-word sentences, all the words with 3 letters. ABCs, MTV, SATs, THC, IRA, NPR. I think it's such a genius journey of a life and how we could see the arc of that happening. Number 5, tell a story. Listen to this one. Think about the story. Ex-wife and contractor now own house. You don't need any more than that to be able to get started thinking about how it could have happened, and it's fun to think about. Class clown, class president, town drunk. Next one, bachelor party, YouTube video, wedding canceled. All right, rule number 6, Be Metaphorical. That's something you could try. One I like was written by an 83-year-old woman who goes by the initials JAN. I follow her on sixwordmemoirs.com. She has a lot of good ones. This one is In Darkness, Look for Dippers. So I love that idea that only in a dark sky could you see like the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper, but also in dark times, we can find the people who lift us up. Another one from Fresh Off the Boat, 13, Left Switzerland. 93, Still Yodeling. All right, so now just for fun to warm up our writing muscles, you're gonna try it. I want every single one of you to right now in your notebook, try to come up with one 6-word memoir. You can use any of those rules or anything you like. Write it right now, but you only have 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna ask you to type them in the chat box. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, go back to the Zoom, and then I'll pick up the screen share again. I know it's brutal, you guys, but you only have 1 more minute. I'm going to give you 60 seconds, and then I'm going to ask you to type in if you've got one that you're willing to share. And if you hate them, you don't have to type one in. Oh, these are awesome. If you have one to share, type it in, and then I'm going to read some of them, and then we're going to have to move on. But you'll know how to do this if it's something that you want to try later. These are so good. Ann Hood, you have really good students out there. All right, I'm going to read you some, and then we're going to move on. Here's Alexandra's 4 humans, 3 animals, beautiful chaos. That is lovely and affirming. Victoria's quarantined, not divorced or pregnant yet. That is so good. And Victoria at sixwordmemoirs.com, they're actually doing right now a coronavirus edition. So you should submit that one today. John's is punch clock, have fun, rinse, repeat. Awesome. Elizabeth Bishop, we have fed kippers dipped in olive oil. So sensory, I love it. Fed to loan sharks in Rabat County. Nice. Thomas, incorrect biopsy, only 11, never again. That tells a story for sure. Fernando, too soon old, too late smart. Italian saying. I like it. Elizabeth Bishop, again, alone again in El Paso, you dig? Funny. Charles, less hair, more sense, still laughing. Go Charles. Oh, this is Raquel's. Insecure, rejection, confidence, revise and resubmit. Yes. Katie, adult orphan who feels parenthood herself, who fears parenthood herself. Nice. Marissa, bought ticket, got refund, still waiting. Oh, yes, yes, I've been there. I'm there. Amy Pearsall. Here we have bang, rattle, crash, slam, fed cat. That's interesting. Very compelling. It makes my imagination go. Sandra, kids off to college, I think. Nurturing birds. Nice. Gym karate, Little girl below the belt. Funny. Oh yeah, Sandra, I made that correction. Okay, Thomasina, old story, new way, holding space. Nice. Brooks, college at 16, annoyed everyone there. Funny. Aggie, Chicago, Boston, Providence, long labor, jet lagged. Oh yeah, I know. Sandra, kids off to college, nurturing birds. Okay. Okay, let's see. Sharing random facts at inappropriate times. That's funny. That's from Brooks. Amanda did the right things, turning left. I think we're gonna have to let's go down to Emily's maybe. Lunch at Cracker Barrel made us parents hysterical and awesome. Okay, good job with that, y'all. Going back to sharing my screen, we're gonna pick up. Let's see, share. All right. Oh, now it's not letting me go forward. There we go. 10 tips for tiny text. What I learned from 6-word memoirs, the very first thing that I want to pass on to you is this. They teach compression, a valuable transferable skill. Writing tiny helps us when we return to the sprawl of longer forms because we're better able to recognize filler or description that doesn't serve the narrative. So Chekhov is a great example of that. Early on in his career, he had to write according to strict space limits in the newspaper, 100 lines exactly of newsprint. And he learned to eliminate all unnecessary details for a story and then really focus on the one luminous image. I also like this David Mamet quote, omission is a form of creation. I myself have made money doing some pretty cheesy freelance writing, you know, for you know, like Southern living and country living. You know, I've written some appalling articles. I've written on, oh, the South's prettiest sorority houses, things I really don't care about at all. However, I wrote them for money. And then sometimes they'd come back and say, oh, we gave you 1,000 words. Now we need it to be 500. And I'd be so annoyed and angry. And then I'd learn how to cut it to 500. And you know what? It was almost always better. So now I try to do it myself without being forced to do it. And I've learned a lot from that. Okay, another really fun form. I'm moving on to new forms called the monostitch. A monostitch is a one-line poem. And these are 4. They're all pretty wonderful. This is by Marie Ponceau. Bliss and Grief is the title. No one is here right now. Artichoke. Oh, heart weighed down by so many wings. Coming home. Even the sunlight is a smell you remembered. Snow. The dead are dreaming of breathing. Okay, one-line poems. I want you to look at these and imagine reading the one-line poem without the title. And think how that would be different. How would these one-line poems be different without the title? I'm guessing that in your own homes right now, you're thinking they wouldn't be much. And you are right. And that brings us to point number 2 of my tips. They need titles. Tiny texts need titles that do heavy lifting. Titles have more impact in short pieces simply because they take up a bigger percentage of the word count. Further, we've all had the experience of being halfway through a novel or memoir and realizing we've forgotten the title. When a piece is bite-sized, the title lingers like an aftertaste during your entire reading experience. Let it contribute to your meaning making. So titles are very important in tiny text. We'll come across some that are untitled, but mostly it is an opportunity to do work, and it's an opportunity you should take advantage of in a tiny text. All right, let's look at this form. 1-sentence memoirs. Okay, the first 3 are all from Allen Ginsberg, who wrote American sentences. He wrote American sentences, and all the American sentences were exactly 17 syllables. I wonder if you could think of why. If only we could see each other face to face and I could ask you these questions. Instead, I'm just going to go ahead and suggest the answer. He was trying to rethink the haiku, which of course 575, 17 syllables, but the American way, where we're not hearing how long a syllable is, but just stretching it out. So look at the first one, title, Tompkins Square, Lower East Side, New York. 4 skinheads stand in the streetlight rain, chatting under an umbrella. That just makes me really happy. The fact that they're chatting, you know, first of all, the skinheads, it's such a terrible image. It's so scary. And that they're chatting. I love that dichotomy. And then I love the phrase streetlight rain. I think we've all seen that before. And then I love the fact that they're under an umbrella, these skinheads, like, really, truly, if you don't want to get wet from the rain, like, grow some damn hair. You know, it's just so funny and silly, you know. Let's jump down to Amy Hempel's one sentence memoir. It is called Memoir. That's the title. Just once in my life, oh, when have I ever wanted anything just once in my life? So good. And then Anne Carson has a series called Short Talks, and they're all very, very odd and delightful. Here's one, it's called On Gertrude Stein, about 9:30. How curious. I had no idea. Today has ended. Random, funny, and wonderful. So what have I learned from one sentence memoirs? Point number 3 is they invite risk-taking because they are low stakes and modest. All right, so I mentioned this last night. Someone asked the question in the Q&A, how long does it take to write a one-sentence memoir? And I was mentioning this exact thing. They liberate us from the pressure to produce something great and therefore might trick us into producing something great. Feeling blocked, challenge yourself to write 60 one-sentence memoirs in an hour. Maybe 59 are garbage. Who cares? That 60th is a keeper. All right, moving us on to a new form. Well, not a new form, actually, a new point I want to make. Lydia Davis is a really wonderful short story writer, and I wanted to look at this little piece. It's called Spring Spleen. I am happy the leaves are growing large so quickly. Soon they will hide the neighbor and her screaming child. I imagine if I was with you in person, some of you guys would be chuckling, and it is funny. I love this narrator who teases us into thinking she's going to say something wonderful about spring, something poetic and romantic and kind, and then it says this thing that blooms into something really bitchy at the end. All right, I've taken hers as she wrote it and I've messed with it a little bit, just reordering the words. Versus spring spleen. Soon the neighbor and her screaming child will be hidden by the leaves growing large so quickly. I am happy. See, all the zip is gone out of that one, all the humor, all the fun. It's the same words, but in a different order. And in this order, it is just simply not as funny. And this brings me to the fourth point I want to make you, the fourth tip for tiny texts, is they can make great use of humor because pieces tend to be trimmed of excess exposition, and so their bones are more visible. What other form features elements stripped of all but the necessary details? The joke. Like jokes, micro-memoirs succeed or fail based on timing. Timing, which is created through the amount and order of information, i.e. syntax, and balance with silence. This is something I think poets are particularly good at. The best lecture I've ever heard on syntax was given by Ellen Bryant Voigt, and she put it in one of those little Grey Wolf books that are on something or other, on this is a series, and she has one called On Syntax. I do recommend it. So it's really fun to try to write something funny if you've never done it before. I myself used to be shy to use humor when I was younger. I think I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to play with the big boys, you know, so they were writing poems about Greek myths. I was gonna write poems about Greek myths, you know. And then as I grew older and I got a little more confident in my own voice, I started bringing humor into my work more often and enjoyed it and thought the reader might too. And the tiny text is an awesome place to try it. Here's one that I didn't put in the PowerPoint because I didn't want to horrify y'all, but now that I've kind of met you guys last night and got a sense of your personalities, I thought maybe you would enjoy it. It's a monostitch. This one's by William Matthews. Premature ejaculation. I'm sorry, this poem is already finished. Great, right? Okay, let's move on. Here's one. It's called Found. That's the title. These sleeping tablets may cause drowsiness. Here's another one by Lydia Davis. An example of the continuing past tense in a hotel room. Your housekeeper has been Shelley. All right, when I read these two, I like to think of what prompted the writer to write these. And the first one by Peter Reading or Redding, I don't know how you say his name, but I kind of love that it has the verb read in it. I imagine him picking up the bottle of sleeping tablets and reading on the back that they may cause drowsiness and just being kind of delighted by the absurdity of that being pointed out and just writing it down, just literally copying it down. And same thing, I imagine Lydia Davis being in the hotel room that has the card telling us the name of the maid so we give a tip. And your housekeeper has been Shelley, and she made that weird thought about the verb tense. I would say there is an element of found poetry in micro memoirs because they're so small. They seem to be something that we arrive at or luck into more than we condense laborious revising. And that brings me to my next point, which is point number 5. Tiny texts make writing more like play because micro memoirs privilege discovery over laborious condensing. They can be more like found poems in this way. You arrive at them instead of whittling away at them. So it does allow us to be open to the moments around us and discover tiny text in the world around us and things we see or hear. That's the fun part. I guess I would say the only thing is if it doesn't work, it does seem harder to revise a tiny text. If it's only 8 or 12 words and it doesn't work, it seems like you just have to kind of throw it away. All right, moving on. These are aphorisms. So James Richardson writes aphorisms, and I think they're wonderful. And this is from a piece he had in APR called 50 Aphorisms and 10-Second Essays. So think about the genre of the 10-second essay, how fun that is. So these are just some I pulled from his list that I loved. 1, the odds against today were insurmountable until it happened. 5, there are 2 kinds of people in the world, and who is not both of them? 6, work is required play. 7, slug, fungus, part of your body has fallen out. Snake, rat, part of it might try to get back in. 8, loving yourself is about as likely as tickling yourself. 10, no one so entertaining as the one who thinks you are. 14, when it gets ahead of itself, the wave breaks. 20, he's angry at the wrong for making the world unjust. 22, nothing dirtier than old soap. 24, snakes cannot back up. Oopsies. The last one is knowing how to be pleased with what's there is the great secret of happy living, sensitive reading, and bad writing. All right, look at that list and try to think, what's the pleasure here? Where does the pleasure come from? Take a look at those. All right, I'm going to suggest that the pleasure in this list has to do with extreme tonal variation. We get something that almost seems like a Zen koan, or a fortune cookie type of wisdom, or some giant universal, when it gets ahead of itself, the wave breaks, something with applicable wisdom. That's a kind of pleasure. But then you bump it up with something like slug, fungus, part of your body has fallen out, something extremely sensory and really visceral. And then just an awesome observation that no one seems to have ever made before, like nothing dirtier than old soap. Suddenly I can see the old soap and how it gets those cracks in it with the brown dirt in them, or snakes cannot back up. It's just, why did I not think of that before? But when I read it, I realize I should have. So the pleasure of going really quickly from one mood to another mood to another mood to another mood, as opposed to keeping it all in one emotional register, is a kind of pleasure. And that brings me to my next point about tiny texts. They encourage tonal variation. While individual pieces are so short that they might allow the expression of one nuance of the human register, they can vary widely in tone from one to another. Challenge yourself to embrace the full range of human emotions. Write some that are wistful, some wry, some poetic, some acerbic, some deliberately flat. Ask yourself, what emotions am I not allowing the reader to experience so far in my project? So you can experiment with tones here. And when you're writing a novel, it's kind of weird, say, if you have a big, serious, sprawling epic and then you have like a breakaway comic scene, people might say, oh, that doesn't seem to fit in this novel. But if it's just a piece that's a paragraph long, you could try any emotion you wanted and you don't even have to sustain it for pages. So you could press the boundaries of your own comfort level to think, I'm gonna, I don't think I'm a writer who's good at melancholy, but I'm going to go all in and see if I can write this piece in that tone. And then the next piece could be a different tone. And I think it's a really lively way of exercising our emotions and then drawing together a collection that allows the reader to experience the full range of her human emotions. And we live in a world that limits the kind of emotions we can have. We're really channeled into just a few kind of acceptable, recognized emotions. And there's a lot that we don't get to feel all that much. And it's a pleasure to feel our feelings. And we as writers can do that for our readers. All right, I'm moving us on, y'all, to the 100-word story. Now, these can be fiction or creative nonfiction according to the 100wordstory.org website. But I do think that it's a fun genre. And this first piece is called Calling Mom Home. Just think about that for title as a second, Calling Mom Home. What do you think that means? What do you think this piece is going to be about? I call my home once a year on the day she died. 5 times I've pulled up Mom Home in my contacts. 5 times I've pressed the phone icon. 5 times she has never picked up. I haven't given her much time. I tap the red disconnect button as soon as I hear the first ring. Call ended flashes across the screen, and she is gone. I worry someday someone will answer, someone who is not my mom, someone whose number this is now. That someone might call back, ask who this is anyway. I would tell them. All right, I just think, I don't know anything about this writer. I just came across this piece on the website, but I do think it's a lovely little piece. I find it really moving and emotional to think of the woman getting at her phone. I love the tense change that happens in the second paragraph. I haven't given her much time, where we see that maybe she's regretting the time she had given her mom. I love, and she is gone, the way it ends that paragraph, and how we see that her mom is dying for her all over again. And I love the last line, I would tell them. So she's telling them who this is and, how she is her mother's daughter. I think it's a lovely little 100-word piece. And I wanted you to know that this form is out there, the 100-word story. Another one that's related is in the New York Times, and they're called tiny love stories. And these have to be true. They don't have to be exactly 100 words. They can be 100 words or less. This is called Back Where We Started. I was recently divorced. Jamie was losing hope. We matched on Tinder, which she wishes I wouldn't mention. She politely offered to meet me on my side of town. I impolitely accepted. She wanted to cancel, but came for one drink to find out that the bar was across the street from her fertility clinic. She regretted not canceling, but drinks turned into dinner, conversation, laughter. Suddenly, she said, pointing, I just froze my eggs in that clinic. She expected me to run. I stayed. 5 years and 3 miscarriages later, we're back where we started, at the clinic, finally using those eggs. Okay, Josh Kutner, I don't know who he is. I do think it's a compelling piece. I also think how fun that the New York Times is running tiny love stories. And guess what? If you wrote a piece, a true piece, 100 words or less, and you sent it to them, they accepted it, you would then be able to say in your bio, you've been published in the New York Times. How about that, my friends? All right. My next point is tiny texts know their own size. They aren't fragments of something larger. They don't wish to expand. So you don't look at a hummingbird and think, oh, if only I had 100 of these, I'd have a crow. Because they're content to be small, they are modest perhaps subversively so. In her Harper's Magazine piece on aphorisms called In Short, y'all can find this online, Sarah Manguso writes, this cultural pressure to think big, to equate size with ambition, is especially burdensome for writers who cannot follow or choose not to follow in the footsteps of great men, who don't fit the Hemingway, Mailer, Roth, Franzen model. Micro memoirs provide a home for those interested in running from go big or go home, running fast with fleet sentences like streamers flying above our heads. Try that, great men. So I just love the fact that, a micro memoir isn't a fragment. It isn't trying to be a part of something. It's its own small thing, and it's a kind of perfection. Again, like the hummingbird that can do things because it's small. A tiny text can do things that a giant novel can't. There's opportunities there. There might be opportunities for you. Moving on to Prose Hybrids. This is a piece I really love. It's by Harriet Mullen. It's called We Are Not Responsible. We are not responsible for your lost or stolen relatives. We cannot guarantee your safety if you disobey our instructions. We do not endorse the causes or claims of people begging for handouts. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Your ticket does not guarantee that we will honor your reservations. In order to facilitate our procedures, please limit your carrying on. Before taking off, please extinguish all smoldering resentments. If you cannot understand English, you will be moved out of the way. In the event of a loss, you'd better look out for yourself. Your insurance was canceled because we can no longer handle your frightful claims. Our handlers lost your luggage and we are unable to find the key to your legal case. You were detained for interrogation because you fit the profile. You are not presumed to be innocent if the police have reason to suspect you are carrying a concealed wallet. It's not our fault you were born wearing a gang color. It's not our obligation to inform you of your rights. Step aside, please, while our officer inspects your bad attitude. You have no rights that we are bound to respect. Please remain calm or we can't be held responsible for what happens to you. All right, pretty awesome piece. I have a question. I'd like y'all to think on it. This is the piece in its entirety. It's one paragraph. Would you prefer this piece if it was 8 pages? I am a mind reader, and I know right now you are thinking to yourself, no, Beth Ann, I would not appreciate this piece anymore if it was 8 pages. This piece does everything it needs to do in this short amount of space. We get the delight of seeing phrases that we can anticipate how they're supposed to end, and mid-sentence, they split wide open and go to a different destination. But they're accruing so rapidly that we're sensing the definition that she's giving and the destination these pieces are going is working to show us something, which is these are phrases from the boring safety language of public transit and airplanes, the stuff that's supposed to keep us safe. But she's revealing that often the powers in charge are not making rules that are keeping us safe. Often they're establishing a status quo and enforcing it in a way that's keeping us less safe. And she makes the point, and she gets in and she gets out, and the one point would not be strengthened by being made over and over and over again. If you just have one point to make, you want to make it as fast as you can and then stop making it. So this is a great example of my next point, which is number 8. Tiny texts provide a home for certain ideas, voices, or music that would be tiresome in anything longer. Also, because they're cushioned by white space, they can be intensely musical or conceptually demanding or deliberately shocking. It's not inconsiderate to exhaust the reader if you provide a rest. Also, they can provide a home for dangerous emotions, something you'd be scared to give rein to in a longer piece. So, for me, I read a piece last night to you from Heating and Cooling about my sister's death. And what's interesting is, she's been dead 11 years and I've published 3 books in that time. And this is the first time I've written about her. And I wonder why now? And I think sometimes our heart has its own timer and we can't rush it. We're beholden to it and captive by it. But I also think that there was something about being able to write about her death in one paragraph where I knew I could go to the bad place and then get back out really fast. And it allowed me to go to the bad place for the first time. Maybe there's something that you've been hesitant to write about, but no, you probably should. What if you didn't try to write about it in a long, long piece? What if you gave yourself a limited amount of space and forgave yourself for knowing that's all you could do? All right, here's another piece I really love. It's by Denise DeHamel. It's kind of under the same idea of a prose hybrid. After my parents' accident, the pies kept coming. Chicken pot pies, size for one person, blueberry pies, ice cream pies, peach cobblers, lemon meringues, pecan pies, pies that were still warm in their tins, apple pies, another chicken pot pie, a big square one, pies with chocolate pudding inside, rhubarb pies, cherry pies, pies with crisscross slats of crust on top, pies from the church, pies from my mother's quilting group, pies from the neighbors, pies from the aunts, pies on the kitchen counter, pies packed the freezer, holy pies, pies with painkiller filling, herbal pies, prayer pies, pies that kept vigil, pies brimming with novenas, pies full of secret that even doctors don't know, magic spell pies, smooth soothing pies overflowing with the music of rainforests, pies made from circles of light, pies with halos. Oh, Denise DeHamel, such a good piece. All right. I love this for how the entire thing is set up with the first four words. After my parents' accident. She never refers to it again, and it's just a list of the pies that people are going to bring her. And the first ones are completely literal. And the first time you read this piece, you get so used to the overwhelming delivery of the pies, just as the speaker must have been overwhelmed by the neighbors delivering pies. And the hammering of the word pies, 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 that you get pretty far into the piece when you start realizing that there's a shift in the middle of the poem and the pies become metaphorical. When you look back at the poem or hybrid piece the second time, you see after pies pack the freezer, holy pies, pies with painkiller filling, herbal pies, prayer pies, pies that kept vigil. And you realize these aren't, of course, real pies. This is verged into the territory of metaphor. So what I love for this piece is it starts out in the realm of memoir and midway through jumps genre and becomes poetry. And I think that that's a really fun thing to do. I read to you a micro memoir last night that I chose to read to you thinking about this point I wanted to make. And it begins, talking about being in the car going to my sister's surprise funeral. And that part of is nonfiction, it's true. And then at the end of it, I become a fox. Of course, someone could say that's not literally true, except it's true in the world of the piece, just as these pies are magic spell pies and pies with halos. Thank you, Denise DeHamel, for that beautiful piece. All right, this brings me to my next point, which is point 9, that they can challenge genre. It's fun to categorize, but it's also fun to transgress boundaries. Trace the evolution of your hybrid, work that has at least 2 literary parents. So that's my definition of a hybrid piece. It has at least 2 literary parents. So maybe one parent is poetry and one is nonfiction or one is fiction, whatever. In today's increasingly heterogeneous landscape, cross-genre works that blend inheritances from multiple literary parents have a new urgency and popularity. So I think it's really fun to try that if you haven't thought about doing that. It's a pretty fun thing to try. All right, and Lydia Davis, who I was talking about earlier, she's the master of that. The one that I had earlier in the PowerPoint, she published in a journal called 32 Poems. So if you publish that in the journal, you are saying it's a poem. Then it was reprinted in Best American Essays, I think, and then she included it in her book of collected short stories. So she literally claimed all 3 genres for that piece. All right, moving on to Twiction, which is Twitter fiction or true tweets. So creative nonfiction is one of my favorite narrative nonfiction magazines. If you don't know it, it's out of Pittsburgh, and they don't do lyric nonfiction. They don't do a lot of crazy experimental hybrid, but in terms of straight up narrative memoir, it's one of the best. And they have something called Tiny Truths, where if you write a true tweet, a creative nonfiction tweet, and you hashtag it, creative nonfiction tweet, they can publish you in their journal. And I think that that's a pretty fun idea. I myself don't tweet. I don't know how to tweet, but I encourage you, if you do, to think about it. Look at the first one by William Bradley. After all that's happened, I still pray, but I fear the phrase, crush my enemies, occurs too frequently in these chats with God. I just think that's so funny. And that's all there is in the tweet. Like, we don't need anything more than that. And his personality comes through. It's beautiful. And the one below that, slow-mo train wreck, this guy is pretty interesting. He did one creative nonfiction tweet a day, one a day for a year about his divorce. So here's just one, slow-mo train wreck. When did our relationship end? Could be when she switched from saying, stop being a jerk, to never mind. I recognize in that a phase of a failing relationship. I thought it was pretty interesting. So this idea of Twiction or true tweets brings me to my last tip for tiny text, which is that they can find publishing opportunities in technology. For example, Narrative Magazine includes an I story in each issue, a short dramatic narrative, fiction or nonfiction, up to 150 words long, designed to be read on an iPhone screen. I think that's a pretty cool idea. I am just gonna let you know, I myself have never submitted to Narrative because I think their submission fees are too high. They charge $22 to submit. If they choose you, you get $100, but I just think that's too much money. However, I like the idea. If someone's waiting for their bus or something, and they could check Facebook or they could read one thing on their screen, why not give them one cool thing to read? And then Lee Gutkind of Creative Nonfiction asked writers to tag their micro essays, and then they'll reprint them, the best ones. Although I know you might need to look up how many characters have to go in a tweet now, because I confess, I don't know the answer to that. So while I don't like technology, I recognize that some of you guys do, and you would find opportunities that exist to publish your tiny text in the fields of creative nonfiction or tiny text micro memoirs, in some of these new things that exist that are fun. So I wanted you to know about that. And let's see. I am also suggesting some further resources for if you decide this is something you're interested in and you want to think about submitting. Brevity is my favorite online magazine for flash nonfiction. I just want you to know they define the genre as 750 words or less, which is actually pretty generous. That's a pretty big amount of words. Brevity is edited by Dinty Moore. He's probably done more than any other writer for the genre. I think he's a great editor, and Brevity is a lovely magazine. Of course, it's free. If you want to submit to it, it's only $3. I think that's entirely reasonable. They edit you fast. They get you online fast. I think they pay $40. So check it out. It's and if you do check it out, my favorite tiny piece on Brevity is by Brenda Miller, and it's called Swerve. So take a look at that. Swerve. I like Diagram, Hippocampus, Flash Cake, Sweet, A Literary Confection. Ooh, sorry, typo. River Teeth's Beautiful Things. That they define it as 250 words or less, but that would be a cool publication. Zatham.com is 55 words or less, and they give prompts, so that could be fun. Thread has something called Stitch, which is very short personal essays of 100 words or less. And the Cincinnati Review has an online feature of 500 words or less. I also will let you know of Rose Metal Press, which is doing a lot of experimental and hybrid stuff, hybrid chapbooks, pretty interesting. And they have something called A Field Guide to Writing Flash Nonfiction. And different editors or different writers give an example of the form and talk it through a little bit. And I think it's a pretty helpful book. There's also an anthology I love called Family Resemblance, an anthology, an exploration of 8 hybrid literary genres, edited by Marcella Sulak and Jacqueline Kolosov. Short form nonfiction is just one section of the 8, but I think all 8 sections are interesting and good. I like that anthology. And of course, Judith Kitchen has a bunch of flash nonfiction and fiction anthologies. And there's actually a literary conference called the IOTA Conference. And all they do at that conference is short forms. And I taught there 2 years ago and I loved it. The director was really fun. So I thought I'd let you know about that. So that brings me to saying thank you. And there I am in front of the English department. So I'm gonna stop sharing now because we have time for a couple questions before I give you your assignment. So I'm gonna pull up the Q&A and the chat. Oh, look at Charles says he's taught at IOTA as well. Great conference. I'm glad you liked so. Oh, let's see. And it looks like Brooks had sent us his 6-word memoir. College at 16, annoyed everyone there. Okay, and I'm gonna go to the chat and see. I hope Aggie, who lost her sound, is back. I don't know how to help her. Oh, Jim, thank you. You're welcome. That's so sweet. So let's see. I don't see any questions. Does anybody have a question? If not, I'm going to move us on to our writing assignment. If you don't have a question, don't feel like you have to ask one to be polite because you could probably use the time for the writing assignment. But I'm just going to pause here and see if anyone does have a question. Oh, good. Aggie got her sound back. Yay! Because technology is scary and I can't help you. Victoria sharing her 6-word memoir. Daddy's accident left us all alone. Oh my goodness. All right. Don't see any questions. So I'm going to, oh, there is a question over here in the question and answer forum. The question is from Marissa, and it's, how often do you practice writing short forms like these? Is this a daily or weekly practice for you? I'm kind of a binge genre writer, Marissa, and I seem to do one thing and go at it really hard, and then for reasons I don't understand myself, switch to a new thing. So I wrote short forms exclusively for you know, about 2.5 years and read short forms exclusively for about 2.5 years and was reading haiku all the time and short stories with Stuart Dybek and all this crazy stuff and writing Heating and Cooling. And then after that, I started to work on a novel again. And now that I'm working on a novel, I'm not writing any short forms. I'm just reading them and loving them and teaching y'all how to do it. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and talk to you then about your assignment so you guys have time to write it. Okay, there is a German word called the Wunderkammer. Wunderkammer means cabinet of wonders. So there was a time before we had, for example, museums, when rich European noblemen in their palaces and crazy manor houses would have a cabinet of wonders in their house, and it would be stocked with items that they used to display their wealth, but also to cause wonder in the eye of the beholder. So I saw one in Germany, and it had things like a narwhal tusk. Oh, good. Brooks helped to curate one of these as an undergrad. If you want to tell us, Brooks, in the chat, some of the stuff you, oh, and there's one at Salve. No way. That's so cool. So y'all could go see this. But the one I saw in Germany had like a narwhal tusk. So imagine if you had never seen the ocean and then you get to see a narwhal tusk or the giant Galapagos turtle shell. Yeah, exactly. A case of curiosities. That's exactly what we're talking about. Also, some of the things in there were designed to cause wonder. Some things were designed to appall or make you think of death, memento mori. For example, one of the ones I saw had shrunken heads from Africa. So this person was, you know, bringing something from another country, or his people were bringing things from another country, and we were supposed to be reflecting on, you know, what that was like. Brooks is saying, right, animal skeletons, taxidermy, all that crazy stuff. I saw one that had stuff designed to titillate, like little tiny jade sculptures from, you know, what would have been the Far East that were in interesting sexual positions. So imagine a time before porn. You know, you're kind of curious how people do it in other places, and so you get to look at those like little sculptures. So things designed to cause wonder, to appall, memento mori, or titillate. So what if you could think of a Wunderkammer, a cabinet of wonder or a cabinet of curiosity, curated from your own life experiences? What if you could fill it with objects that you once had access to, even if you don't have them anymore, because it's going to be a cabinet of wonders from your memory? So this is a two-part writing assignment, and I want you guys to start with this. In your notebook or on your laptop in front of you, I'd like the first thing you do is to come up with a list of things you would use to stock your cabinet of wonders, things that should cause wonder and maybe even have a charged sense of danger. But the one thing I want to tell you is, don't go for the most obvious one. Like if I asked you to come up with a list of things that had a sense of danger to them, and you put in like a gun that you once saw or a knife that you once held, it's a little obvious, isn't it, that a gun would be connected with danger or a knife would be. What would be the surprising thing that would be connected with danger or wonder or appall from your own life experiences? We're going to work in the realm of nonfiction for a little bit. Start right now. Come up with a list. You do not have to share the list. I'm going to give you guys about 4 minutes. Let's go.
Beth Ann, I lost my connection for a moment. Could you repeat the assignment?
Absolutely, Charles. What I'm asking you to do is come up with a list of items that you would put in the cabinet of curiosities in your mind. These are items from your past that are charged with wonder or danger, that represent something to you that would surprise people who looked at it and heard the story. So it's a two-part writing assignment. Right now, you're just writing the list, and it just as many items as you can put on the list. You will not have to share them aloud.
Thank you.
Sure thing. One more minute for everybody. Okay, friends, I know you probably haven't finished your list, but you've gotten a couple. So I want to tell you what's going to happen next. I have a piece called Small Fry in Heating and Cooling, and you might remember that in this piece I was talking about how I was at my friend's house as a girl, and her grandfather, who was this kind of like shuffly man that no one seemed to really listen to or respect, would always sneak off into the closet and do something in the closet. So one day I followed him in there, which now strikes me as strange as an adult, but I followed him in there and he turned around really fast when he saw me, and he was getting something out of his coat pocket and he held up a French fry, a McDonald's French fry. And I realized that he was sneaking it. He was not supposed to be eating the French fry. And you know, when you're a little kid, you realize you have no power, but you think grown-ups have power. And then there comes a point when you realize the very tall, old grown-ups also don't have power. And we had this weird moment of communion where he handed me the French fry and I understood it was an object of danger and my taking it was a kind of complicity. So I want you to look at your list now and find the thing in it that has the most charge or resonance, but also is a surprise. Something you'd have to explain why it had charge or resonance that maybe to the average person, it wouldn't necessarily look that dangerous. To find the one thing and write a 1-paragraph micro memoir in which you don't give a lot of big buildup, but just describe the object and let the reader feel why it's an object of danger or wonder. So you only have 10 minutes to write these, a little bit less, and then I'm going to ask if anyone wants to cut and paste theirs in the chat room or read it aloud. Get started. You guys have 5 minutes to go, and Jen has issued the helpful reminder to let you know your camera might pop on when y'all share your pieces. So if you're naked, go ahead and put on your Rolling Stones tank top right now. Okay, just 2 minutes to finish up, everybody. So put your whatever changes and final things you need to make on your piece, and then we're going to ask for a couple volunteers to read. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. I see y'all coming back in the room. Welcome back, and I'm glad that I'm going to be able to hear you now. So you're coming back muted. But anybody who would like to share, I want you to find your raise your hand icon. Does everybody know where that is? And go ahead and hit that. And then I'm gonna call on you, ask you to unmute, and then you can read your piece. So I'm gonna go with Katie Hughes first. Katie Hughes, I can't see exactly what your last name is. It begins with PU, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Unmute yourself and tell us your piece.
Sure. Okay, here it is. I have fished them from trash bins for her at Burger King's and Dunkin' Donuts. I almost drank them from a cup that held them as she left them next to an identical Dixie cup I had filled with Listerine. Her S sounds aspirated when they were missing, but her TH sounds lisped when they were in. In fluffing Graham's pillow, I palmed the gooey saliva-filled dentures. I didn't feel like getting up, she said.
Oh my God, that was so awesome. Katie, I love the way you start the description and you don't tell us it's the dentures right away. And we slowly have this like sense of mounting horror as we get there. That was awesome. I love that piece. Amazing. Like my work here's done. Like mic drop, I'm out, you know. Okay, good. And so Amanda, would you read yours?
Sure. There's a wooden back scratcher on the windowsill. It belonged to my father before he moved away. As a girl, I'd pretend the wooden back scratcher was a tomahawk and hurl it across the room. I prayed that it would ricochet and come back like a boomerang. I did this every day.
Whoa, that is so good. And I love the way you set it up with before my father moved away. And so the idea of the boomerang, like the thing that you hope that comes back, is perfectly established with just those a couple words at the very beginning. I thought it was restrained yet powerful. That was awesome. The next, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Next person on my list is Jim Burdick.
Testing.
We can hear you.
Thank you. It's not the glass, it's what's in it. The amber color sticks out with the white head of foam, little bubbles rising to the top along the inside, while condensated summertime sweat drips down the bottom on the outside. Uncle Charlie keeps a shaky hand on the glass, while I need both hands to hold it up to my face. I never smelled something so skunk-like that wasn't black and white before. Mom's having an argument. She hates drinking. Seeing it tear too many families apart while she's worked for CPS. But it's only a sip. Go, just one. As the liquid hits my tongue, I cringe. It's too sour for my taste. Everyone laughs. Dad tells Mom that now I'll never drink Michelob Ultra again. In a way, he's kind of right.
Oh, wow. That was good. It was both threatening and funny at the same time. That is really great. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Marissa, I see you. Marissa Gallerani.
That's me. Can you hear me all right?
I can. Thank you so much.
All right. Beneath the dresser in my childhood bedroom lies a boxed up photo that has never been displayed. By the time I thought to hang it, the walls had been painted and adorned with crown molding, and my mother forbade it. If I were to remove it, I'd see the 209 members of my high school graduating class. Girls in white dresses with bouquets of flowers, guys with blue blazers with corsages. We are assembled thusly to look as erudite and refined as we can as we head off to our elite universities, the pride and joy of our boarding school. For many of us, we wouldn't have understood the charade of it all, and all I can think of now is how little I knew.
Whoa, that was awesome. I love being in the child's point of view there too, and how we're seeing everything from those eyes. That was beautiful. I loved it. Thank you so much. All right, if you've already spoken and you have your hand raised, lower your hands because we're coming to the end of our time and I want to make sure I'd like to get everybody I could get. So who, let's see, I see Brooks, looks like your hand is up, go ahead.
All right, I am getting my Google Doc up. Excuse me, I'm a technological granny. Snake. The word has been neatly written on a yellow note card, and it labels my pencil box, the contents of which have been dumped out on our kitchen table. I know the box is not empty, and I have a clue as to what could be inside. I'm going to kill that man, says my mother, who's already retreated to the far end of the room. Even at 5 years old, I can piece together what happened. My father found a snake, probably the bright-eyed garden variety, at one of his job sites, brought it home to show me, and, seeing my mother and I weren't home, decided to leave it here for us to find. I'll put it outside so you won't have to see it, says my mother bravely. I don't tell her that her courage is wasted, that my object of wonder is her object of fear, but I love that she is being brave for me, so I let her take it outside, holding our combined wonder and fear in her hands.
God, that's great. I loved it, Brooks. It's such an interesting moment when the child realizes that she's separate from the mother, you know, that her emotions are different than the mother's emotions. And in fact, in this one instance, maybe more mature. That's really a curious moment, and I think a very human moment. Thank you for reading that. That was beautiful. We have 2 final readers. It looks like Leah and John have their hands up. So Leah, go ahead.
Great, thank you. They're tucked into a black velvet bag. Squared ones, worn ones, fished. The one from the mango Grandma gave you. The one the real estate agent took without asking. That one marked with dried blood. Each of them a moment plucked from your childhood and saved by the tooth fairy.
Wow, that was awesome. Yes, completely. I love that piece. Thank you so much for reading that, Leah. That was really interesting. Awesome. John, you are our last reader today. Go ahead.
The back is covered with an irregular splay of ancient dried paste of no interest even to insects. The torn edges of the vinyled paper form an uneven triangle, blue patch flecked with gold, an abstract bit of 1960s wallpaper. Pulled from the house I grew up in, it is the last thing my mother touched.
Whoa. That was beautiful and really surprising. And when we think of the last thing people touched, we'd never think of the wallpaper, you know? So the imagery is there, the surprise is there, and the emotional connection was there. That was amazing. All right, you guys did it. What a fun thing it was to share my thinking with you on this, you know, genre that I've enjoyed, and to hear some of your voices. I encourage you guys to keep trying this if it was fun for you. And you know, I'll let Jen close us out, but before she does, I just want to say thank you so much for, you know, giving me your attention and your warm welcome. And I love that we're all in this endeavor together, and may we all stay sane. Thank you.
Beth Ann, thank you so much for being so generous. We loved having you. Next time we promise we'll be in person, but I know that they've really enjoyed it. The writing exercises were fabulous.
Oh, good.
Really loved hearing you talk and then see what they did with what you told them. So it was great. I'm thinking of my own cabinet and what would be in it of wonder and danger. So
ooh, I bet you'd have a very good cabinet, Anne.
Beth, and I know Jen will join me in saying thank you so much, and big hello to your wonderful family, and I hope we see each other again soon.
Thanks, Anne. Love you, miss you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Jen, you're muted. Yeah, now we can hear you, I think. Nope. Mm-mm. Okay, I'm sorry. You might have to sign it.
Jen, are you using your are you using an external microphone or your onboard microphone? If you go down to your microphone icon and click on that, you'll see which you have selected.
Okay. All right. Well, don't worry about it, Jen. You know, I'll email you the PowerPoint. It looks like a couple people mentioned in the chat that they were hoping to get it, and they were happy to keep it among their own cohort. So that's great. And I'll just say thank you again. Bye, everybody. Bye.